Hello and welcome to You're Not Gonna Make It. My name is Nico. I'm a writer, director, filmmaker from Argentina based in Los Angeles. And You're Not Gonna Make It is a podcast about surviving or career expectations, where I sit down with successful people, but to debunk their seemingly perfect lives and find out what making it really means for them and for me. And these explorations have been great. I hope you're liking them. And today's guest is Trevor Wall, and Trevor has an amazing career. It's very, very interesting. He's an independent filmmaker, a producer. He started working back in the day with Will Smith, and later he worked closely with Emmy winner and indie champion Lena Waithe to lay the foundations and infrastructure before she launched her company Hellman Grad, which is famous now. His first feature as an independent producer happened to be Ponyboi, directed by Esteban Arango. And the feature became the talk of the town in Sundance. Ponyboi is a very, very regarded film, and the first one that Trevor does as an independent filmmaker. So that's quite a success. And he's currently in post-production for his next feature called Slanted, and we're going to talk about that in the podcast as well. This film now is written and directed by Amy Wang, who's preparing to shoot Crazy Rich Asians 2. Okay. Without further ado, this is my very interesting conversation with Trevor Wall. Okay. Hi, Trevor. How are you, man?
Hi, I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Very excited to have you here. We were just having the small talk portion of this thing, and I was telling you that I've been stalking you online. But, it's my job, so it's fine. I'm allowed to. What's funny to me is that as filmmakers, we kind of like seek a kind of like a parental figure in producers. It's interesting because we are kind of like it's so important for us to find that person who's as excited as we are in the project, but from a completely different perspective. And so that's why I'm really excited to be talking to you today. You're the first producer on the podcast, which is exciting. And I guess I want to ask you first, what's your favorite thing about being a film producer? And we can dive into all the things later. But I want to open there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say my favorite thing about being a film producer is to be able to be a part of the entire process, sort of from beginning to end. I think when you think about the different roles of different people and what we do, it's fragmented, and actors are only a part of it during the set portion, yada yada, and directors coming on and directing the movie, and then so as producing, being able to sort of either from the very beginning of developing a story with a writer or reading their first draft or a script, all through the casting or the development and then the casting, and finding the financing, production, post, and then like festival marketing, distribution, like being able to sort of go through beginning to end. It can be really, really fulfilling, especially when you have a movie and a project that you care a lot about, and you really want to amplify and share the story. So yeah,
that tells me a lot about what kind of producer are you, because it seems like you get involved in the creative side before the logistics start, right? So I guess I had a question that I wanted to ask you about that. Like, how do you choose a project? Are you exposed to a bunch of different things and then you choose one, or you have like a network? Just tell me a little bit about how that things start for you.
Yeah. I mean, I can come in at any sort of stage, and for me, as someone who really enjoys having a sort of my creative itch scratched and being able to sort of like do some creative writing, at least supplementally to a writer. It can happen even as early as the last movie I just shot and wrapped this summer. The filmmaker, who was an old friend of mine, came to me with just like a log line, just like an idea. And from there, she and I working together and developing the story and the characters and the themes we want to explore. So it could even happen that early, from like I said, yeah, friends or
Hmm.
filmmakers that you sort of meet through either representation or seeing some of their work online, or I can just receive a finished script either from a filmmaker or contact that I've already sort of had a relationship with, or through the representation, different places to be able to just like find new stories. But I really enjoy, I think for me, the early the better in terms of being able to like be a part of the creation process, be a part of those brainstorming sessions, are really really fulfilling for me.
That's great. I mean, to know that the filmmakers can count on your perspective from early on. I always think that there's something about shaping your creativity into something that is viable, as I call it. It's sometimes counterproductive for a creative, but having that second brain that can guide that process without you having to check on what, is this something that will sell or not, which is, I think, not great for the creative process.
Yeah.
But having someone who's like have a kind of like a one foot there and one foot in the
Yes.
creative could be
Yes.
very interesting.
Yeah, I've definitely found the position I'm in to be very bifurcated, sort of in that way, in terms of on one end being very creative and working with the actual creatives and the artists and things like that. But then, yeah, simultaneously, the other half of me is sort of communicating with financiers, with executives, with representation, and sort of figuring out sort of those pieces and the actual sort of project management of it, and also the marketplace selling of it. Um, but yeah, I actually um, find find great sort of joy and fulfillment being able to, if anything, be a kind of like the bridge between both, between sort of the art and the commerce. That's an aspect of, I would say, producing that really I really really enjoy.
I want to dig into the origin story, if you will, of how you become a producer. And I know that in your past, you grew up with a mom that is a cinephile, and she exposes you to film. And I'm curious. I want to start there a little bit
Yeah.
back in time and ask you, what kind of movies do you remember that were the ones that moved you in the beginning and marked your journey as a filmmaker?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, my mom, she pretty much collected a lot of old film and a lot of books on like old classic Hollywood. I would say like her her sort of love was American Hollywood cinema from like the early 1900s to maybe about like the 50s or 60s. So it started out with a lot of like Chaplin and Buster Keaton, and then we got into back then it's like very star driven as opposed to filmmaker
Mm-hmm.
driven. So yeah, we watched a lot of Katharine Hepburn and Elizabeth Taylor, and Ingrid Bergman, Humphrey Bogart. I just like grew up. It was just all on TV all the time because that's what she just had turn classical
That's
movies
so
and
cool.
whatnot playing all the time. And yeah, just she had a passion and love for it that as a single mom she never got a chance to pursue any kind of career in, but just had such a deep love and passion that kind of fed right into me through osmosis, and just really fell in love with that art form. So
There's something funny. That's a side note, which is that my producer introduced us, Helen, who produces the podcast, and I asked her if she knew you well, and she was like, "Well, we don't know that we know each other that well, but I know his mom." It's like, what? Yeah, she was in Sundance. His mom was in Sundance, and we ended up talking for hours. So I'm
yeah,
friends with his mom, and
that's
I
amazing.
thought that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
coolest
yeah.
introduction that we
No,
could have.
she's yeah,
I love that she's
she's
around and she's like with you in this journey, which is amazing to
oh
have her.
yeah. Oh no, she full on gets to live vicariously sort of through me. So she loves when I call and explain like on-set drama or things that are happening, and yeah, bringing her to Sundance for the premiere of my first feature film that I got to produce was just such a special moment. Honestly, it's one
And
that
we're gonna get there because I want to talk about Ponyboi, which was the talk of the
okay.
town, but back in Sundance. But I want to ask you: so your childhood, your mom exposed, like it's kind of like the one that unlocks that door of cinema for you. But then you work with for like very early on after college, you work for the Will Smith company,
hmm
in what is this, Overbrook, right?
Yeah. It's now
And
they're
what
now called Westbrook, but back in the day it was Overbrook.
back then, and what was it like, and how do you end up there, and what was it like, those first experiences of working in a company? I bet that, and like that, and have you ever met him back then?
Yeah, briefly, yes.
Oh
But
my
yeah, no,
god,
it
that has to
was.
be I mean, that has to had an impact
Oh,
on
absolutely. I mean,
someone
for
coming out of
me,
college. You're kind of like thrown into the belly of the beast in a way.
yes. And I was actually, I was still in college, and yeah, I was interning there, working my part-time job and going to school. So it was a lot. That honestly, one of the greatest experiences. I mean, the Will Smith aside, which is already like a huge thing, especially for me, as a young black boy growing up, like Will Smith
Of
was sort
course.
of my version of representation. Like the OG first Men in Black is still one of my, really, touchstone personal movies for me. So being able to sort of, enter the Hollywood industry through him and his company was really special. And then beyond that, um, I underestimated how much of an impact it was to have my first Hollywood sort of company opportunity be a black-owned company, and sort of being able to work with a ton of black creative executives that were also incredibly supportive and a huge inspiration, and some being still mentors to me to this day was really impactful for me as well. And overall, just a really great experience. I know a lot of a lot of interns, or the internship program at Will Smith's Overbrook back in the day was something that was really just uh, well known in terms of it brought in a lot of interns and really helped people sort of find their way in this
Back
path.
when
So
that
I
is
really
was
appreciate it.
not the trend. This is a time when
Right.
this wasn't the trend as it is right now. Hopefully continues. I don't know what's going to happen, but there wasn't that many opportunities for underrepresented groups as they are now.
Oh, for sure, for sure. And for me, as like someone who had no connections or any sort of family connections to this industry at all, I literally found out about the internship because I mentioned I worked at a part-time job. I worked at the Apple store. One of my coworkers at the Apple store did the internship, and she referred
Wow.
me and got me on. So it was, yeah, I without any sort of connections or path was able to enter into a really welcoming and great space for me to just learn because I was so new. I didn't know, uh, you know, anything honestly, other than I like movies. So
And then your journey. I know your journey goes through other companies. Every place you touch is very relevant, including Lena Wythe before she opens Hillman Grad, right? Um, and I know that you help her build the infrastructure for the company. And my question would be, what takes you to from like being part of those structures to decide that you want to be an independent producer and do things on your own? What was
yeah.
the thing that because you were like you have a very good career inside those companies already when you decide to become an independent
hmm
filmmaker?
hmm Yeah, it was an interesting path and journey in the sense of so when I was started working with Lena, it was through my old boss, who was Lena's manager at the time. So I started sort of on the management side, and that was part of, with her pre Hellman grad, just managing her own sort of slate of projects that she was building and sort of creating before she got a deal to sort of create her own company. And I was working closely with my old boss or manager at the time. Uh, and a manager sort of dynamic as opposed to an agent one is a little bit more creative. You really actually are kind of
Yes.
being able to collaborate with the clients and hear their stories at a very early stage and be able to sort of help guide and shape their writing and their screenplays. And it was that sort of development process by proxy of management that made me realize, oh, I really enjoy this part of it. But I was more invested in the projects than the clients themselves, and that's sort of where I think it
Hmm.
differentiated into producing, where I have so much respect for managers that really, they dedicate their lives to helping these artists
And
through their
nurturing them, yeah.
yeah, and through their career. And for me, I was always more drawn to the actual stories in the project specifically, and wanting to, put all of my energy into the story, and work towards and serving the story. And that's sort of where it's sort of positioned a little bit over into producing, but still sort of being able to be a part of writers and artists' lives in that sort of early development stage.
And that it leads us to Ponyboi, which is not only your first feature as an independent producer, but one that goes to Sundance and becomes like a very important movie this year. And so I want to ask you how that came to be. When is it that you heard about the project for the first time?
Yeah, so I first got introduced to the project through one of the short film's co-directors. So the short film Ponyboi, that was sort of proof of concept for the larger Ponyboi feature film. It
Hmm.
was co-directed by River Gaio, who's the writer and star of Ponyboi. But the co-director, her name is Sade Clack and Joseph. And through mutual friends, she and I connected, and that's how I first watched the short film, was through her, and was really taken away and blown away by the artistry and by the story, and specifically River's story, of being intersex, and wanted to know more about it, and got connected to River through Sade. Read a draft of the feature script, which I really liked, but at the time I was working at the Mission Entertainment, the management company that managed Lena, among others. And we weren't sort of in a position quite yet to be able to produce. We were, still very much in the management side of things, but I still remembered really liking the script. And then fast forward to when I joined a new company called 30,000 Feet that was, producing film, TV, and documentaries backed by Drake, the music artist. And at that time, I got in. They wanted me to really bring in projects that I loved, projects I was really passionate about. They wanted to build up their development slate of movies and different
Hmm.
projects.
What
And
year is this?
that was in 2021.
Okay,
So
post
yeah, it was
pandemic,
yeah,
peak streaming.
post-pandemic. Uh-huh, uh-huh, and, so I circled back on Ponyboi, and checked in on it, and, it was still available, much to my surprise, because I thought the writing was so good. But I understood, maybe people and companies don't wanna, take a risk on, sort of a new voice, especially like a new, lead actor and star of the
Hmm.
movie, but I really enjoyed it, so I brought it into my old boss at the time, and it was one of the first projects that I brought to the company, 30,000 Feet. And, that company, we had our own financing, so we were able to just start, making it pretty soon after me bringing it into my old boss. We, attached a director and all those things, but yeah, it was just through that relationship that spanned years, because it was, I met River and read that script before I was even at, the place of employment I was at before. So yeah.
How was the experience of going from a script to a finished piece, and then the expectations that come with the festival run? Because it sounds like, to me, I mean, in my experience, smaller movies are the ones that are in the most need of attention in
Mm,
festivals,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
How was the moment where, I mean, walk me through the days of the locking, the picture lock. Is the movie ready by the time that the submission deadline comes around, or are you running around trying to
Ooh,
finish it?
yeah, yeah, we're still running around trying to finish it, but mostly finishing
Classic.
touches. Yeah, I know, exactly, yeah, yeah, but luckily it was just finishing
It never
touches.
does that. You have like
Nothing.
2 months in your hard drive prior to a deadline.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah, yeah. But
it
no,
never
luckily,
happens
like,
to anyone.
no major things, like major VFX or anything like that, that were holding us up.
Okay.
But yeah, so just small finishing things that we still were tinkering with. through the deadline. But yeah, I mean, honestly, from picture lock to the festival part, that post-production period is actually my favorite stage of sort of the entire filmmaking process. Because,
Interesting. You
yeah,
like to be
yeah,
part of the edit, like part of the edit, part of
I do, I do. I mean,
the building blocks of the post.
yeah, I mean, obviously, I lean back and let the director and editor cook
Mm-hmm.
in the editing bay and watch cuts as they sort of invite me to watch them. But I really enjoy that aspect of you're really seeing the movie come to life just right before your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
With each cut as you're sort of tinkering and giving notes and deciding, oh, maybe we should trim here, trim there. I often sort of equate it to like treating a plant like almost like a bonsai tree. You're just kind of like trimming and like each little thing, each small little trim, you start to see it slowly get better and better with each cut, and it
Yes.
gets more. And it's so exciting because that first cut you see is rough for sure, and it can be it
It's
can
panic inducing. You can say it.
yes,
I don't know how a producer experiences this, but to me, the most dreadful moment in my life is to see the first cut of anything I shoot. It's
yeah,
just like it's a pit in my stomach. Like my pressure drops.
oh
It's like,
yeah,
oh shit,
no,
I
it's
fucked up. And then eventually you start working on it and you go like, oh no, it needed to be edited. You
yes,
needed some editing, but I'm
yes.
not a disaster.
Oh yeah, no, it's just part of the process. It's yeah, because I think you have when you go in to ready to see your movie when it's that first cut, you have all these expectations. You really want it to you really want it to look as if it's supposed to look, and sound how it's supposed to sound, which is the biggest thing too. Because
Sound. Oh my
yeah,
god. Yeah, we
the
could
sound coming from so
dedicate a
much
whole
later.
podcast to that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
no,
first
because
cut at least.
sound, it's very hard to see the movie without sound, and you're forced to see it and judge it because you're editing. So
Right, exactly, and not to mention, I've found that sound, particularly, the score, music, that when you're in the editing room and trying to just lock picture before you get to sound, you the score, like, plays a heavy, heavy role in terms of how you want audiences to feel in certain scenes and sort of
mm-hmm.
coding and shaping the overall tone,
Yeah.
that it is really, really challenging to just kind of push the sound part of editing to the backside. When I do think, especially with the score, it's something that should be really kind of also discussed at the same time as the picture
So tell
locking.
me about that music, the music process. Like you folks had the music or composed for the edit while you were going through the edit, or you were waiting for the edit lock to do the music.
So luckily with Ponyboi, we got a fantastic composer, Crystal Ball, who was like coming right off of composing White Lotus, and people were making like TikToks about the theme song to I think it was like season
I
2
mean,
of White
that theme
Lotus,
song
and
is crazy.
it
It's
was one
fucking
where as
crazy.
producers we were like, wow, I didn't realize our composer was like also part of like the package and the lure of our movie. But yeah, he was having a moment, and he is fantastic and really worked really closely with our director Esteban, and was able to get us a score, not the obviously complete sort of finished and polished one, but like good sound cues and melodies and tempos that we were already playing with in sort of the picture edit, which was really helpful and super informative to be able to decide yeah how tonally we want people to feel. When do we want the scores to come in and things like that. It was really really awesome. It was so cool.
That's amazing. You mentioned before something about not, I'm paraphrasing, but not suffocating the vision of the artist. And I want to ask you, where is the line for you between
Ooh.
guidance, which is much needed from a producer, especially a producer that is involved in the creative side of things, and not interfering with the vision of the artist? Where is that balance for you?
It's a great, great, great question. It's a hard balance. It's one.
Is it?
It
So
is. I
is
mean,
it
because
I saw your
because
face. You was like,
well, it's because
it's
it's
so
one
hard.
where
Sometimes I guess it's harder than other days.
oh, I mean, it's just
You want
one
to kill
where
us?
no, no, not at all. No, if anything, it's more. I have to. I have to come to a realization and the respectful realization of this is not my movie. Like I love the movie. am helping this movie come to life, and I want this movie to be told. I'm producing the movie, but this isn't my movie. Like if I would have preferred a different shot or a different take, like for the most part, I'm going to let the director go with their vision. I'm not going to interrupt that. So yeah, it's a delicate balance, and one that uh I mostly just try to provide my feedback and my notes, that just come from a true place of honesty. Like, this is how I think, this is how I feel. You may not agree, and that's fine. But just, yeah, being very just open, honest, and open communication, I think, without overstepping, by also recognizing that, hey, you are the director, you have the final say, but here's what I think, here's my opinion, take it what you will. 'Cause yeah, I mean, it's all collaborative, and yeah, it's one where I don't, as a producer, sort of throw my fist down in any way, because we're all going for the same thing. We're all trying to make a very good movie, ultimately. So it's just trying to
Do
be
you ever
supportive and
daydream
collaborative.
with? Do you ever daydream with the days of the movies I used to watch with your mom, where the producer was a dictator that imposed his will on the
Oh
filmmakers?
yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, a perfect
An
example.
omnipotent dictator.
Yeah, I mean, a perfect example of that, speaking of, the movies I grew up watching with my mom, is Hitchcock. Like, Hitchcock was a big, director, at my house, and talk about, yeah, just a notorious absolute, like, tyrant, like, really awful.
Yeah.
And, honestly, now having made, a couple of movies and gone through the process, I definitely, don't admire sort of that level of creative genius, as much as I did, in terms of, like, you can still be a kind human being and a good person. Like, there are morals and ethics to how you wield your power, and how you're sort of making this art. But yes, yeah, no, the Hitchcock was definitely a big one growing up, for sure.
I mean, and he was a director that had power, but many times the producers were, I mean, for the most history of cinema, producers were the owner in America. Producers were the owners of the film, and they would impose it. I mean, Hitchcock was one of the rare cases of a director that had all the power, but the power was very, very kind of like this imbalanced with the
For
studio
sure.
heads and
For
the
sure.
producers. So it's
For sure.
interesting that, I mean, I think American independent filmmaking has come to this conclusion of a collaborative thing, and the culture is changing in that now. It's not like the kind of like the dictator genius that imposes his will over everyone else is not in trend, and I like that, because it's been,
Me
for the
too.
most part, the myth of the male, especially male genius,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
it needs to be forgiven of all his
Yes.
inadequacies
Yes.
just because he's a genius, and you have to accept it. And that's, yeah, we're moving past that. It's great. I want to ask you about the moment that, so you send the movie, is Sundance the objective for Ponyboi? Like, the strategy is around that, is around Sundance as the main festival for it, when you are finishing it?
It was, yeah, as we were finishing it, it was, right around the Sundance deadline, and that was definitely the festival that we were talking about, primarily, and it was our first real sort of submission, and heavy sort of push to try to get into.
Who learns that you're in, who in the team learns that you're in the festival first? Who
Yeah,
heard first from the festival?
my old boss, and I guess fellow producer on the movie, Mark Ankner. So he was the first to find out, and told me and Rivers and Esteban.
Do you
Through
remember that moment?
I do. I do. This is gonna sound really cocky and arrogant, but I had a feeling. I really
Really?
did. I just I felt really good about the movie at that point. We talked about how the first cut is always rough, but it was
Hmm.
honestly going through the process. I think it was about like the third, maybe fourth cut. I watched it after all the notes we've been giving, and I was like, oh, okay, like I think we got something here. Like, this is really special. At least it's something I'm really proud of, and I think a lot of people will also enjoy. And yeah, I just really try to ride that wave and ride that good energy, and just having a good feeling that it was going to get in, at the very least get in, which was like kind of the ultimate sort of goal and validation, and yeah, just I think, the legitimacy of and the legacy of Sundance. So.
That's amazing. I mean, I bet that it was a happy moment, even though you thought it was possible. Just to hear the confirmation,
Oh
it's
yeah. Oh, I mean, the
it
confirmation
means
obviously is
everything
everything.
for a movie like Ponyboi, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. No, I was, especially for this to be my first go at it, like making the movie. I I learned so much. There was so much I didn't know. I was figuring things out on the fly. It was a really, really hard production. It was also, the movie mostly takes place over the course of one night, so a lot of night shoots, a lot of late, late, late wrap calls into the early morning. So it was just a really, really hard experience, especially for my first one, and to have it validated by getting into Sundance. For me, honestly, and the announcement came at a time when I was about to make this leap into independently producing, and it was really kind of the validation and the kind of the nudge off the cliff that I needed to be like, okay, like maybe you could do this, maybe you have some type of skill or talent, or at the very least luck, to be able to, like, try to do this on my own. So it was exactly at the right time for me, and everything, to be able to have this be sort of a kickstart to what could hopefully be a decent career.
And how was the experience of the festival for you with the movie?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it's festivals are always fun. I will say, as I'm a Southern California boy, and I also an
It's
island
cold.
boy with Caribbean roots. It's very, very cool.
It's
I
cold,
literally
and
only I
you're it. Sorry,
Oh, no, I was gonna say I literally only own a winter coat because I live here in LA. I only own a winter coat for Sundance. Like, that's pretty
the
much.
Sundance coat. Yeah, we all have it, and it's you're the thing with it for those who haven't experienced it. It's like it's not just it's cold and you're inside. It's cold and you're outside. It's the whole thing is designed for
Mhm,
you to be making lines under the snow,
mhm,
and
mhm.
it's a tough experience, and I think
Yeah,
it creates bonds for life for
it
with
does.
those
It
that you
does. Yeah,
experience it.
yeah, yeah. But no, I mean, outside of the cold, I mean, similar to most festival experiences, there's just an air and a love and excitement for movies, and what we're doing, what we're seeing, and people are sharing what they just saw, what they're really excited about, and it's just overall really, really great time. And to have a movie there, to have people talk about your movie, and obviously congratulate you. And for me especially, the moment I loved the most was, Mark and I really prioritized wanting to invite a lot of our crew out to Sundance, or at the very least be like, hey,
Which is not nothing because everything is so expensive. Like just to
so
move people
expensive.
out there
So at the
is
very
a big
least,
commitment.
oh,
Yeah,
100%. And even even at the very least, for, like, anyone that could make it out to Sundance themselves will be like, "We got you a ticket." Like, it was very
yeah.
much just we wanted really to celebrate all the hard work we did because it was such a hard shoot. And for me, the one of the most rewarding moments, honestly, at Sundance was our premiere, but specifically being able to see the finished movie with our crew, and then have them see it for the first time. Because by the time it premiered at Sundance, I had seen almost like maybe almost 20 different cuts of the movie. So, like, obviously I'd seen it a lot. But having to sort of hear and see it with the fresh eyes of excitement, and
Isn't
also
that a
just like,
completely different experience though?
it is.
Isn't like I think for create I mean I always say the same thing and I've said it here before, but I feel like the closest you get as a creator to see your movie with fresh eyes is with an audience for the first time. It's the closest you get because like funny enough, like you, Trevor, will never experience Ponyboi like it was intended to be experienced because you've been seeing it change and grow from a script. So
Right.
you are one of the few people in the world that won't see the movie, which is so heartbreaking for me. And I think it's so fascinating that we don't get the same experience. To me, seeing it with an audience gets me as close as it will ever be. For some reason, you reset your brain and you start seeing things, sometimes flaws, but sometimes things you love about the project.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and the audience reactions too. Like I there were times where they laughed at parts that I didn't expect, like in a good way,
So
or they were
interesting.
so surprised and like they gasped at other moments that I didn't think. I thought like it was going to have an impact, but not that big of an impact. Because yeah, you get so desensitized watching the movie so much and knowing the story and knowing each beat and what happens, that you forget that these are being revealed to an audience for the first time, and hearing and seeing those live reactions is really special.
I want to get into Slanted, which is the movie you're currently in post production, which is I'm very interested. But before that, I want to touch upon the something that it's kind of like through line of this podcast, and it's about how do we prioritize the process over the outcome when in the things that we're doing, especially on a place that it's so competitive, a landscape that is so hard to navigate and so uncertain right now. And it sometimes feels that if you don't get into Sundance, or if or if you don't get to the point that you're expecting, then the journey has no meaning. I wonder, how do you balance your mental health there when you are in a project? Because the movie's good, you know that it needs that push that a festival can give you. How do you make sure that if it doesn't happen, you can still feel connected to the project and still push forward?
Yeah, that's a really, really, really good question. I mean, I think at the end of the day, for me, what it really came down to with Ponyboi, and this was like, before we heard about the festival at Acceptance, or even as I'm going through it now with Slanted, is I just really want to make a movie that at the end of the day I can say I'm proud of. I can say like
Hmm.
I just it makes me feel good that we did all this work and the finished product is something that I'm really just happy with and pleased with, and I can sort of walk away from, regardless of the success, the festival success, or if it blows up to become this huge, major cultural moment in a movie, or if it becomes just a small thing, just something, a work of art, that I can show somebody that I can hit play and be just proud of and really be happy, and pleased with what we created. I think that's what I keep sort of coming back to at sort of a core level, because it is really hard in this industry that is so competitive and is also very results driven and is also very sort of acceptance and validating driven, and even that outward, external validation, that at the end of the day, we're just trying to make art. It's really expensive art, but we're making art, and we just want to ultimately make, a work of art that we're proud of to show people.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's something that we all struggle with, I think, is to keep or focus on the art and not completely bend to the will of whatever we think will make something successful, which is sometimes deceiving, and that's an abstraction that it never can be fulfilled, right?
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
in the other hand, I feel that I mean, you are a young producer. Your first feature is Ponyboi, goes into Sundance. It's kind of like the pinnacle of what the expectations are for it. And I wonder, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you put that in perspective so that becomes a stepping stone in your career and not something that hinders you for
That's a
the
good
future?
question.
You know what I mean? I feel like some people, I mean, I think we have a harder time sometimes learning from success than we do from failure, and success can be also kind of like a burden because it's a pressure for the next thing.
Yes. Yes. No, I can completely agree with that. Yeah, there was a lot of pressure, uh, having sort of a Sundance movie and feel not really pressure externally, but honestly, most of it was internally with me in terms of like,
Mm,
okay, now I
mm.
have to take advantage of this moment. Now I got to maximize this moment to
The
its greatest
spotlight
potential.
metaphor, which is
Yes,
so shitty.
exactly. Yeah, all of those things, that it really, ultimately just had to sort of make some level of peace with, where like I'm gonna do the best I can, because also, like I said, at the time of the Sundance premiere, it was right when I was stepping into a sort of freelance independent producer life, and
Hmm.
that comes with a lot of other things to handle and a lot of other things, a lot of priorities that come into play that aren't career related, that you have to manage and factor into. So I had to sort of make peace with being able to only just do as much as I can. And if I'm not making every sort of relationship or reaching out to every person, every executive or financier or whoever that saw Ponyboi at Sundance, that's just going to be the way it is. Hopefully, it had an impact on them, and maybe when I run into them, they'll be like, "Oh, I remember that movie." But yeah, it's hard to not go down that spiral of mostly, like I said, self-inflicted pressure, to be able to make something out of this big of a moment.
How crazy is that the moment where you achieve what you were working so hard and for so long, that only creates more pressure for you. It really puts in perspective the fact that there's nothing you can conquer that won't give you the just stability and happiness that you are seeking. Like, it's something that you got to build in the process, because like there's nothing at the other side of the rainbow that will fix the fundamental anxieties of being a human.
Yes, yes. Oh yeah, yeah. And like with Ponyboi and like premiering at Sundance, and now we're having the distribution conversations and all that. But then it came to be like, well, I gotta move on to the next one. Like, I gotta eat, I gotta pay my next bill, and I gotta find the next
Mm-hmm.
movie, and so it's yeah, it very much requires just needing to constantly sort of look ahead and look forward.
I'm curious about the current project, which is also in post production right now,
Hmm. Hmm.
conveniently close to the Sundance deadline,
Very,
submission
very
deadline.
close, very close. So close. It's we're
Here we go
trying.
again.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying, but it's gonna be a tight photo finish. It'll be tough. I don't know if I don't know. We're trying to make it. We're trying to make it.
Yeah, there's no calm for us. So tell me how you came about this project and how did it originated, and if you want to, I mean,
Yeah.
can you talk about this? Is it too premature to talk about
No,
it?
I mean, yeah, I mean, where there was yeah, no, we had like a public sort of announcement of the movie and the cast. So yeah,
Okay,
there's this
so we
movie.
can we can dive in a little bit.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So it actually this is one of the examples that a filmmaker who was an old friend of mine that I met through her previous manager, that was also a friend, and watched her short film and really I think her thesis film, and I really really loved it. I thought she was incredible, and met with her, but then also just like became friends. Like we would go see movies together, we just kind of just like just naturally, organically kind of develop that kind of friendship. And she called me with this really weird idea, and it's just a log line. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like we should kind of explore this. Like we should flesh it out more and see what happens. So it ended up leading to just like a bunch of sort of brainstorming sessions over Zoom where we would talk about like what we're trying to say with the movie, what is, the beginning, middle, and end, their characters, their own arcs, as well as like the themes that we're trying to explore, and ultimately landed on this, pitch of the entire story and the characters that we brought in and pitched to my old boss at the time, who
Hmm.
also produced Ponyboy with. And the movie, I don't know if we have time, if I should get into like telling you
Yeah,
what the
of
movie's
course, all the
about.
time. If you have the
Okay,
time, I
because
have it.
oh, okay, great, because it's a movie I really enjoy telling people because it is so strange, and I like strange.
I love
It's
that.
so it's a high school movie about a Chinese American high schooler that goes to a predominantly white high school in the South Middle America. It's just any town USA basically,
Hmm.
and she's a complete outsider and outcast. She's got one other best friend that's Indian American, but she sees the like popular girls that she wants to really be with, that are all white and blonde, and she has like this little like Timothy Chalamet kind of boy crush that doesn't know she exists. So for her, in order to feel assimilated, to feel just accepted by her peers, not feel like such an outcast. Her goal is to win prom queen. That's her sort of north star.
Hmm.
That's her dream. But at the school, all the prom queens of the past have been blonde haired, blue eyed, and people kind of have to know who you are to win prom queen, which she struggles with. So after some like sort of failed attempts at trying to get her name out there and face out there, she takes a drastic measure and goes to this like offbeat surgical center that's tucked away in the corner that does experimental transracial surgery. So she completely changes into a white girl
That's
in a weird
fascinating.
sort of like Charlie Kaufman-esque, Black Mirror-esque kind of place.
I love that.
Completely changed into a white girl. So she comes home. Her parents are obviously super pissed. They're like, they don't even know who's this strange white woman in their house. They're like, who is this person? Get out of here. She re-enrolls in school under a new name. She gets in with the like Regina George popular girls. She gets in with her boy crush. She's on the path to winning prom queen, living her best life. But obviously, with the drama and conflict at home, because her parents are obviously still very, very upset, that over the course of the movie, she's learning that she should have loved herself, loved her cultural identity, loved what made her special, all these things. That by the end, on stage, winning prom queen, stuck in this white skin, and there's nothing she can do about it. And it's really this kind of like dark, twisted morality tale, kind of about self-love and loving your culture through a weird high school movie lens.
Wow, that's quite a premise. And it sounds like the execution is very cool.
Yeah, no, so that's what I mean by Amy, the filmmaker. That first initial phone call, she just told me, she was like, I had this idea about a Chinese high schooler turning white to be popular and accepted, and I'm like, well,
That's a good log line. Yeah.
that sounds crazy. I'm like, I wanna know more. Let's unpack this. Let's explore. Um, and yeah, no, it just really turned into something that for her and I, especially in the development process, as much as it's still very much obviously her experience, she's Chinese Australian, coming from China and then going to school in Australia, feeling very much like an outsider. But I also was really bringing a lot of myself in that development process too. I grew up in uh, Orange County, which is very white suburbs, and I was going to predominantly white high schools where it was, just me as the only black person or one of the few, and really sharing in a lot of those same sort of emotions and feelings and wanting to
Hmm.
thematically say a lot of these things about sort of not truly loving who we are in that sort of very critical coming of age, early teen or late teen years. That it was really just a beautiful creative experience and collaboration between Amy and I. So
That's beautiful, and it seems like you have an artistic through line to your work, which is creating consistency. It's almost as a very unique artistic point of view that I think that will guide you through like the next project as well, because you're planting certain flags that kind of identify with the kind of thing that you want to do, which is very interesting.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I would say it definitely the through line between Ponyboi and Slanted are very much people that one didn't get to see a lot of themselves on screen, so just a representation aspect of it that obviously I can very much relate to. But also I even noticed too there's a sort of theme around like I mentioned being bifurcated as a producer, but also me being black biracial and with Ponyboy, the main character being intersex and being sort of non-binary in terms of gender. And, with Slanted, we're dealing with the binary of Chinese and white. So there's also, a through line there of just feeling like you don't belong and there's
Yeah,
no real
like a fish
space.
out of water.
Exactly. And there's no real space for you, even though the world is trying to put you in a certain place, in a certain space, and trying to just navigate those feelings. Because at the end of the day, we're all still human beings. I tell people like the main motivation for what I do in terms of producing and making movies is to me, I am someone who believes that it's the greatest tool to create empathy and really just, especially on like a sort of a mass media scale, to be able to have characters on screen in stories that may not look the same way you look or use the same pronouns you use or love the same way you love or even believe in the same God that you believe in. But a person can look at a character on screen and know what it's like to have their heart broken. They know what it's like to feel scared or to feel lost and confused. just natural human emotions that really connect us and bind us. So, what I try to do with a lot of the movies and the work that I'm producing and being a part of is being able to show audiences that they can connect to people that don't look like them or all these things just from a basic human
That's
level.
fascinating. I think it's kind of like, to me, when I think a lot about that. I think, to me, that's the next stage of representation, is for us to create stories that reflect who we are, with at the same time delivering a universal message that can let other people identify and have a way into the stories. And it seems like that's what you're also looking for: stories that have like a clear identitarian point of view, and they're talking about this, but at the same time let other people outside of those identities come in and
Yeah.
vicariously live a human experience through the films, which I think is much needed, because I tend to think that sometimes we get, as creators, get trapped in our own identities as the only place that we're allowed to create. And so
Mm,
having a way to create stories that feel universal at the same time that feel unique,
mhm,
it's so
mhm.
important.
Oh yeah,
I
because I mean,
definitely can identify with that.
there is universality in the specificity of the story that
Yes.
you're telling, and that's
Yes.
something that I think is can get often lost, especially in the sort of Hollywood commerce side of things. When from a covert commerce mindset, we are trying to obviously make something that as many people will enjoy as possible, so we can be able to have enough success or be able to make a profit on all these things, but the specificity of a specific story that you're telling and a specific perspective and point of view can really invite a lot of people in very just unique ways that often are much more resonant and really sort of land and hit differently. When I watch a movie that is chronicling someone else's very different experience, but oh wow, we both have a mom that is, can be overwhelming with their love and can be suffocating, or we both have a dad that's, maybe not those things. All of these things that there's still relatability within a very specific POV that, even if anything, binds us and brings us more and closer together than something very amorphous and very vague and very just open to just anyone and everybody.
That's fascinating. And I want to land our conversation on how do you feel the landscape of filmmaking, independent filmmaking right now. We are taping this in August 2024, and it seems like we've been saying survive till 25 for a while, and now people are starting to get scared that may not be enough time.
Yeah, yeah. The
May not be enough time to see us thrive. And do you see what are you seeing, and what advice would you give to independent filmmakers right now? Where to look, or how to operate?
It's really hard. I mean, to your point on, like, the 2025 being, uh, what we're all looking forward to, the pole position keeps getting, keeps moving and shifting, because it's yeah, the post-strike sort of market and industry that we're in, is very hard, not just on the creative side, but even also the executive side. I'm seeing a lot of my friends get let go at these major companies and all of these things, and there's just an overall tightening of spending, and a tightening of spending is, a tightening of being able to make and create. So it is a really, really difficult and challenging moment in our industry. But you're actually, it's lucky that you're very lucky that you're asking me this question today in this moment, because I'm feeling rather optimistic, which is
Okay,
good.
I like to hear that.
Yeah, in that I have been reflecting and thinking about how I do feel like, especially in the independent film space, uh, I feel in my bones this potential, like, resurgence or an uplift in that specific space, the same way we had, Sidney Lumet and Francis Ford Coppola and Scorsese in the '70s, and in the '90s, we had, like, Tarantino and Linklater and Fincher and Spike Jonze. I'm feeling in this sort of 2020s post-strike, I think we're gonna see a lot of really fantastic art come out of the independent film space, and also see a lot of attention being drawn to it too, because I also think major cast members and actors are kind of getting tired of doing the same soulless sort of corporate stuff, at least from the conversations I've been having with talent I've been lucky to have conversations with. Is there's ones where like you do it for the paycheck, you do it for to buy the nice house, but there's not there's a lack of creative fulfillment that
Yeah.
these big actors, as much as like they're doing these big movies and some maybe not as fulfilling as others, they're still artists like us at sort of the heart at the heart of it, and they're wanting to do things that excite them that are creatively fulfilling. And from Ponyboi and Slanted, the actors that we ultimately cast, those conversations were really around that. They were really around like, ah, man, I'm really kind of being burnt out by, the studio system, like all these movies that kind of, I'm standing in front of green screens and doing all these things that I really want to sink my teeth into really creatively exciting stories or really juicy roles that allow me to really flex my muscles and to, be complex and do these things that I think can only be found in the independent film space because these studios right now are being so driven by commerce and capitalism and, corporations that are so devoid of that creativity that's at the heart of it. So I'm feeling optimistic and hopeful, at least in this moment, at least today, that there is going to be some type of resurgence in the independent film space because that's just where the fulfilling art is going to start to be made and the only place. And I think great talent is going to go in that direction. And where great talent goes, I feel like money will follow in terms of like the financing and being able to actually make these things.
In this day and age, it's not easy to find an optimistic note, so I'm going to close the conversation before we go into a grim.
Yeah, exactly. You caught me on a good day because listen, now that I'm freelancing, independent producing, it's tough out here trying to
It's
make
tough
my
out
own,
there, I bet.
trying to make my own money and not a part of a cushy salary from a company. It's definitely a grind, and it's been really, really a challenge for me as I'm still very new to it. Just getting my sea legs this year, but I'm also very much finding that having some optimism, having some hope, having some faith, like really kind of goes a long way in terms of just trying to keep your head above water and to get up the next morning. So yeah, you're catching me in this moment in this wave, and yeah, I'm I agree. We should definitely ride this wave.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your optimism with us today and all your insights. And thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so nice.
Bye.
Bye.